Cursed chair, Sawdust Crusaders.
Leaving the apartment has been tough. We don't do it a lot because of the implication. You know, because of the vampires. The vampires. That's why we're not leaving. Anyway, one day we did have to leave the apartments. And we noticed in the hallway a chair and some other stuff. But we'll talk about that later. Or maybe never. Who cares? And it was mysterious. It had the words free on it. I guess that's just one word. Free. A deception from the vampire? Maybe so. But we decided to take it into our apartment and change it. Maybe lift any curses that might be upon it. Or at least all the varnish that's covering it. The chair was covered in mysterious nicks and marks. Claw marks, bite marks, so many marks.
Puncture wounds.
Puncture wounds. Yeah. Sure. I mean, some of them did look like that. We decided that wasn't totally our aesthetic and decided to sand the crap out of this chair, which was a terrible idea. And I knew it was a terrible idea, mostly because it was a lot of work and it didn't look that much different. I covered the leather part in painter's tape and magazines that were definitely addressed to me. I did this to preserve the nice leather aspect and all the little metal buttons. Are they buttons? I don't know. Rivets.
I don't know.
That were on it. But yeah, I ended up just sanding on it by accident and learned that it was not actual leather, it was pleather because it totally melted onto the chair, and that gave me more to do with the palm sander and sanding by hand, which was okay. So my mom sent me a pack of sandpaper in my Easter basket. How auspicious was that? Thanks, Mom. I love you. She too fights the vampire. My idea was to sand just enough varnish and stain off so that I could paint over it or finish it differently. For the most part, that was achieved? Question mark? I got really frustrated and tired of sanding, and we did it 100% in our apartment because we don't have an outside space. So we constructed this, I'm going to call it the sand castle. Anyway, I just got fed up with sanding. So I kind of changed my vision so that it was mostly naked on the top where it kind of counted more. And then it had like a mottled look going down where I cared way less. After one day of sanding, I thought that the varnish was dead. It was not. It was undead. So I had to sand a freaking whole other day. After the second day of sanding, I had to retape it because it was just full of dust and...
So now it's all set to be painted, right?
It is all set to be painted, I hope. I took a few days away from the chair. Over those few days, it was my intention to consider how I wanted to finish it. I just had no inspiration, pretty much at all. I experimented with staining in some sort of pattern, but kind of like a lazy pattern. I went with a geode or some sort of stripe. I just kind of improvised most of the way up the chair. It was going fine and I was enjoying myself up to a point. Then it came to the main events, or like the back, or what would you call it?
The front back? The front of the back?
The front back.
I don't know. The face of
Sure,
the chair?
we'll go with the face of the chair. And I just really had no idea what I wanted to do besides maybe preserve the wooden eyes that were there. Geo pattern reminded me of some rocks. I ended up thinking about petroglyphs and went my own way with designing kind of magical or mystical creatures in petroglyph. I made up a bunch of these symbols. There's really no meaning besides the crude interpretation, or like the crude depiction of what they're supposed to be. Maybe you can guess. If you can't, I'm sorry. But finishing those parts, just, man, I thought I was at all is lost at a few points in this process, but this was really the worst. I started with pencil because I was like, oh, maybe that's rough and rustic, but that just didn't really work very well. I started painting over it, but I'm just like so technically inept that everything I was doing just really frustrated me and made me feel terrible and bad. And I have an artistic crutch, or something that I like to do frequently, and that's...
You see it as a crutch.
Yeah, well, I have this thing that I do, and that I like doing outlines. I feel like it makes things look more crisp and purposeful. In the past, it's been described as a crutch for me, let's just say. So I ugly cried, had a total breakdown trying to paint this that I would like to say has never happened before or is even rare, but I do a lot of crying, especially these days.
Don't we all?
Don't we all?
So after the crying...
I mean, after a lot of crying.
Yeah.
Is there life after crying? So I painted over the rest of my design, outlined it with a frickin' Sharpie because that's just what I like. I don't know, after a good cry, it was just more clear to me that you don't have to be technically good at drawing or painting or sanding or pretty much anything to still be good at art or like still be good at being creative. Just, I don't know, I'm trying to say that it's frustrating when you can't do what is going on in your mind or you can't fulfill your vision with the skills that you have. But that doesn't mean that what you have and what you're thinking about is not worth saying. So if you're making something, just go with it. Just make it. This is not great.
That was a good inspirational speech. I liked it. I mean, it sounded like you were talking to yourself, but I mean, that's where a lot of good inspiration comes from, probably.
Cool.
So yeah, that was good.
Oh yeah, I didn't talk about the orange on top though.
Oh yeah, talk about the orange.
I thinned out some red and orange paint with water. I kind of created my own stain or wash, let's say. A tooth whistle. I had a tooth whistle.
That's a good tooth whistle.
So I decided to wash the entire chair or any part that I had sanded before in this mixture. And it actually, I feel like it brought things together, kind of subdued some loud parts of the chair. And that was a risk, but one that I'm glad that I took because I really like the way it's looking now. Next, seal the paint juices in and the curses and the lampiers out with a protective layer of spar earthing. I did go in off camera with a few details with a paint pen. I don't know, just to jazz it up a bit. Alright, well, this is fun. I haven't had the opportunity to flex this much in a while artistically, so that was cool. I found it pretty challenging emotionally. But yeah, who's not being challenged emotionally right now? Nope. I had fun. Theme is no theme.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
The ends. Finish it differently. Oh, I hit the mic again.